Sexologist, everybody. Kissing Tell Magazine here, Dr. Jenny. We're here to talk about the never-ending topic of sex. Yippee! And our guest tonight is Goody Howard, and you're going to have fun listening to her and I talk tonight. I know you will. Welcome, Goody.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me.
Mhm. So, one thing that we wanted to talk about with everybody listening tonight is how do you know when something's accurate with the topic of sex? How do you
Mm.
know who to listen to?
I think that is a great question. Actually, you never really know when things are accurate. It's something may be accurate for me that may not be accurate for you, and vice versa. And so you really have to consider the source. Like, is this a person that I would trust giving me this information? Is this person, do they have a background in this information? Do they have any type of certificate or degree? But what is their experience, their professional development level, right? If they're trying to give you advice or education, forthright, like just face to face. But it's interesting when you say what's accurate because even someone with a great professional background may
Mhm.
not necessarily be well versed in a specific topic. Like, for example, I'm a pleasure professional. I do sexuality education work, sex pleasure work, all that kind of stuff. But I am not, I have a baseline understanding of polyamory. But when it gets into the intricacies of polyamory, I defer out because I know professionals that work in the spaces of polyamory. Or if someone has, questions around pegging or anal sex, I have a baseline understanding of those things. But if they really want in-depth support, I'm going to refer out. So as a person that's not a sexuality professional, it's really hard to tell what's accurate and what's not. And also, maybe what used to be accurate may not be accurate any longer. So there's
Mhm.
lots of that as well. There are only like 2 or 3 medical books that contain the clitoris.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So those books are medically accurate, but they've left out a very important body part, right? So the concept of accurate, I think, is is such it's very interesting because again, it's something that was true 5 years ago may not necessarily be true now. We both have our pronouns in
Mhm.
our name tag. That
Mhm.
wasn't normalized 5 years ago.
Right.
It wasn't inaccurate. It just wasn't normalized, right? And
Right.
so when you think about when I think about accuracy specifically, I think of what people say medically accurate. And Dr. Bianca Loriano said that um, medically accurate is often used as a shield for discrimination. Like obesity is the medicalization of fat. Having
Mhm.
fat on your body is not inherently unhealthy. Having fat on your body does not automatically mean that you have certain challenges or comorbidities, etc. But obesity has this medicalization to it that is accurate, but it's
Mhm.
also not always relevant or not always, or that can be harmful. Um,
Mhm.
so when I think of accuracy, I really, it's like, it's so subjective, even though you think accuracy is like a cut and dried, it's either a black or white, right? Like there's no gray. But accuracy, just the concept of accuracy, can be subjective.
Right.
And so I think it really is a hard road to hoe when you think about people that are not in this industry trying to find reliable, accurate, um, safe information about their bodies and their pleasures and the way that they're having sex or their curiosities about sex or anything like that. I think it's kind of like therapy. It's kind of like
Mhm.
finding a doctor or even a nail tech, right? You have to try a couple of them before you find the right fit for you.
Right.
Um, and it's not always just one. Like you may be able to come to one of my workshops and you get something that you needed, and then you may see some articles on Kiss and Tell magazine that also
Mhm.
resonate with you, or you
Mhm.
may see someone that maybe used to be a porn star and now they are doing sex education and something that they say resonates with you, right? So
Mhm.
there's lots of different ways um, to identify and define accuracy for yourself, and that's, I mean, I know it's like a real like it's a real politician answer, right? But
Yeah.
I mean, the concept of that, it's when you think about like accuracy as far as genitalia, um, and sexual function and things of that nature, even then, accuracy, the line of accuracy can be blurred in the sense that if that practitioner is not using inclusive language, or if that practitioner um, is, using heteronormative tropes, or if that person, or if that person may not make space for intersex people, or like it's so much that you have to consider when you're delivering information, and in the spectrum of social media specifically. When you think about social media, it's just like this you have to make it bite size for people, and you have to make it 60 seconds, or you have to make it 90 seconds, and in that 90 seconds you may not be able to get everything in, so it may not feel as accurate, or people don't read the caption, so the accuracy may be in the caption, right? So I think in the days and times that we are in now of social media consumption, and just the salaciousness that can come with being a sex positive professional, um, we kind of get lost in the shuffle on accuracy.
Right. But what you do, explain to the audience what you do. Tell them what
Okay.
you do.
Okay. I have two business models. I'm a sexuality educator. I tell people I am a sexologist, educator, and consultant. And I have two business models. So the first business model is pleasure development. And that is where I sell sex toys and pleasure tools and assistive tech, because I believe that sex toys are assistive tech. I teach sexual skill building workshops like oral sex on a vulva, oral sex on a penis. I teach a class called Rightology, which is a partner on top workshop. And I actually, when I created that workshop, I took into consideration the size of the penis, the size of the partners, range of motion, impact on the knees and back, right? And I also took into consideration how to ride dick with your anus, your vulva, or your vagina, and how to caress two vulvas together, because we can't assume that the person on top, but there's always going to be penis and vagina. We can't always assume those, and I try to, when I create workshops, I try to make sure that they're as inclusive as possible. And I don't deliver my workshops in a gendered way, because I want everyone to be able to hear what I'm saying and see themselves in the information. So it makes sense to me to present in a way that no matter who's watching it, they can at least see something and get something out of it. So I do that. And then I have like t-shirts called Goody Gear on the pleasure development side. And so they're like, I call them conversation starters. So there's one that looks like the Visa logo, but it says vulva, and it says it's everywhere you want to be. There's one that looks like the MasterCard logo, but it says masturbate.
Yeah.
I have one that says get on his dick, not on his nerves. Work their clit, not their nerves. But they're conversation starters. And so typically what happens is other pleasure professionals will buy those t-shirts and wear them, and you can get your website put on the back, or your Instagram put, I let people customize their shirts. And so they're starting conversations wherever they go. So it's a way for them to kind of market their businesses. And then it's also fun for lay people too, to just wear them.
We contacted you. We've been talking about selling kiss towel stuff. Maybe I'll just add my logo to your product. So
yeah, it's always a great segue. And so you're kind of always, people are like, what? Let me see this shirt.
right.
And so then that's the pleasure development side. And then the professional development side of my business is where I do sexual health, equity, and pleasure workshops for educators, social workers, and healthcare providers. So these are not other sexuality professionals. These are lay people that are helping professionals, because my thought process was, if I can give these helping professionals, these first line interactors, a baseline understanding of sexuality, then they can help their gender and sexuality expansive patients and clients more inclusively and holistically, but also it'll help them with their cisgender hetero clients as well. And so I'm sorry. I teach sex throughout the lifespan, sex, gender, and orientation, navigating pronouns for all those types of helping professionals. And those are connected to their CEs, to their continuing education credits for their licenses in the state of Texas only currently. Um, but what I'm working on right now is it's called a compact. And so a compact states are the ones that reciprocate the licenses of different states.
Mm-hmm.
So any state that reciprocates Texas licenses, I'm reaching out to them to become a certified CE provider for those states as well, so that I can then, offer the professional development to those people. And it's really interesting because my bachelor's is in business. So I have a bachelor's of business, a master of social work, and a master's of public health. And so I layer all my formal education with my informal education. And that's how I kind of came up with my business models. But like we were talking earlier, it's interesting because everyone thinks that if they're having sex, they can be a sexuality professional.
Yeah.
People think that if they're having sex, or they've had a lot of partners, or they, like you said, have written a book or whatever, that they can suddenly be sexuality professionals. And they can be, but not in the same ways that we are, not with the same frameworks and the information, like they're not trauma informed, or they're not, systemic approach, or they're not, whatever the case may be. They have missing pieces of formal education to feed into that informal education. And I often draw the parallel of that's like someone thinking because they eat food that they can make food. People think that because they eat food at a restaurant, they can be a cordon bleu chef. You can't. Just because you eat food does not make you a chef. And so just because you have sex does not make you a sex educator or a sex therapist or a sex coach or any of those things.
But, people, to be similar to the pronoun thing, that they need to add that to their statement, meaning my statement about sex applies to me.
Right.
It doesn't, what I've learned through reading this book or attending this workshop or having this many partners pertains to me. And, and sometimes people don't hear it that way, or it's not delivered in that manner.
Yeah.
It's delivered in an absolute, this is the way, period.
Exactly. And there's no one way to do anything. And then I also have to be understanding and considerate of the fact that lived experience is informative, not definitive. So just because I've done something doesn't mean that it's going to work for everyone else. Now, of course, there are some best practices, but even in that, like when I teach my oral sex, if I teach a blowjob class, there are some best practices when it comes to performing oral sex on a penis. But I also get into the diet, the hygiene, adding toys to the positions that are most fellatio friendly. Like I get into everything around the act of performing oral sex, and I don't present my workshops from the benefit of the receiver. So like, you see on Cosmo or whatever, 8 ways to please your man or please your partner. I don't care about any of that. I teach from the perspective of the pleasure of the giver. I tell people if you have not reached orgasm from performing oral sex, your life is incomplete. And so I'm here to help you get that together, right? And so understanding that it's I teach from the perspective of the giver. So because if you're enjoying it, you're going to do it more. If you're enjoying it, your partner's going to enjoy it. You know what I'm saying? So we want to center the giver and not the receiver. And so often the conversation around pleasure is penis shaped. And we have to kind of shift that, but also talking about adding toys into your performance, because I say science and hoe shit. And so that's the name of the book that I'm working on. I own scienceandhoeshit.com. I use science to explain pleasure. Okay. And so when we're talking about performing oral sex on your partner, be it a penis or a vulva, if you use toys or stimulate your genitals while you're performing oral sex on your partner, it sort of creates this operant conditioning, right, of giving and receiving pleasure. You're giving pleasure and receiving pleasure. So it sort of creates this Pavlovian response to performing oral sex. And so now your genitals are like, oh, we're doing this again. And so the toys or the genital stimulations tends to act as training wheels. And then when you get to the point that you may not even need to stimulate your genitals while performing oral sex because your body has already sort of built that bridge, that muscle memory is kicking in. And people don't think about, oh, I'm going to hear about operant conditioning in a blowjob class. Yes, yes, you are. You know what I'm saying? Because we bring it there. It's the science of it for real. And I think that's why I say I'm a sexologist, because it's the scientific study of sex. But also thinking about on Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? You have that pyramid. On the bottom is that food, water, shelter. I feel like there's an asterisk and that says pleasure, right? It's food, water, shelter, pleasure. And once you experience that pleasure piece and you can provide that for yourself, it catapults you to the top of the pyramid, which is self-actualization.
Right.
So there's nothing like being able to provide your own pleasure.
But on top of what you're saying, it helps you be in the moment.
It does.
When you're giving and you want to give.
Yes.
That
Yes.
means
The desire, the enthusiasm, right? Those are the things that you can bring to the table that will make the experience better for everyone. When I'm teaching I teach a workshop called Sensual Intelligence. And that's more of a soft skill workshop because I believe that sensuality is experiencing non-sexual pleasure through all 6 of the senses. So sight, sound, taste, touch, scent, and feel, that emotional, that feel component, right? And so when you move through the world and experience non-sexual pleasure on a regular daily basis, it makes pleasure accessible for you. So it's great for your mental wellness, right? Your mental health. And then when it's time to become sexual, you're a sensual being having a sexual experience. So you're now experiencing sex through all 6 of the senses. And so it adds layers to your pleasure, but it also makes you more receptive to the more than 18 different types of orgasms that the human body has to offer, depending on which version of the human body you have. And so it's not necessarily a sexual skill building workshop, right? But it is a very much mindset and soft skill workshop. And it helps everyone experience all kinds of pleasure in a way that is more permanent and prevalent. Because when we think about pleasure, most people think about sex.
Right.
And when you separate sex from pleasure and understand that pleasure is a beautiful day, pleasure is a good hair day, pleasure is a cute outfit day, right? And understanding that it's so much more accessible than having to, I have to shave my legs, I have to find the condoms, I have to make sure the toys are charged up, I have to, when you separate sex from pleasure, you experience pleasure so much more frequently. And then you have a pleasure-filled life. And then when it's time to get sexual, now you're bringing your pleasurable experiences into this sexual space.
What do you find is the most difficult for people in the steps of the census? What do you find they have the hardest? I mean, I could answer that, but I'd rather have your take on it.
I think it depends on the person. But typically, the reason I even created Sensual Intelligence was because people kept saying that their biggest challenge when it comes to pleasure was staying in the moment, being focused, being grounded. And so if you're kissing someone and you look at it sensually, you're thinking of the softness of their lips, the warmth of their breath, their pleasure sounds. You're exchanging the same breath. Like, it's very intimate. And so you're allowed, then you focus on each piece of the pleasure. And so you're maintaining the moment. Whereas if you don't approach it that way, it does tend to be harder to stay in the moment. And so I can't really pinpoint which sense people have the most challenge engaging. But I think that just as a whole, it's more helpful for people that have a hard time staying in the moment.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. It is being in the present.
Yes.
As you're kissing, as you're caressing, as you're undressing. I mean, it's being there. And we're so human, we're either thinking about the future, or thinking about the past, or thinking about what we need to do in that 10 minutes, instead of being present in the moment and feeling what's happening.
Yeah.
and realizing who we're connecting with, that we're connecting with somebody who matters to us,
Yes.
physically and mentally.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's a big thing, and it translates to self pleasure, partnered pleasure. It translates to, just like I said, walking down the street on a beautiful day. And once people, I think we often get so detached from what joy looks like,
Mm-hmm.
especially with, now we have the pandemic, we have all these ridiculous political things happening. Like,
Right,
it's really easy to get detached from joy.
right.
And I think that joy and pleasure are resistance.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that being sensually intelligent is an easy way to connect to joy, to connect to happiness, to connect to pleasure in a way that feeds your soul. And like I said, it empowers your mental wellness and your emotional wellness in a way that I don't really think we even realize how important and paramount that is.
Mm-hmm. Well, and then, back to you saying that you teach, different levels of sex ed, you're probably the only person that teaches it from being in the moment.
Yeah. I
You
mean,
know, you can't do that K through two, but or
yeah,
middle school. But the point is it has to be taught. And usually, that's not a part of the conversation.
correct.
It's just about protection, watch out for STIs
Hmm.
and stuff like that. But it's not about the pleasure aspect of the shopping.
Correct. Correct. And then, and even when we talk about pleasure, even at a pre-K, so when I do educators, when I teach sexuality education for educators, the
Mm-hmm.
regular, teachers, pre-K,
Mm-hmm.
it goes pre-K through second grade, third through fifth, sixth through eighth, ninth through 12th, and then collegiate. Now, when I'm
Mm-hmm.
talking to pre-K through second grade teachers, these are the people that dress up for the holidays and they have, fun
Mm-hmm.
little vests with envelopes on them and think,
Right.
these people are not prepared to be sex educators, okay? And they're they're usually scared of what the concept is going to be and what we're going to be talking about. But when we start talking about boundaries and autonomy and the right names for the body and how families look different and all families deserve respect and
Mm-hmm.
how, like, because they're like, oh my God, are you going to teach us about gay people and how to teach these babies about gayness? And I was like, kind of, but no. Like, if Johnny has two moms, that's
Mm-hmm.
okay, and Johnny shouldn't be teased because he has two moms, and that's
Mm-hmm.
the extent of it. And how families look different, and we don't talk about romantic love between the students and all
Mm-hmm.
of this, because in real life, I'm a queer person. I'm married to a man, but I'm a queer human being, and
Mm-hmm.
so for the straight people, they think, oh well, they trust children to know that they're straight. It's like you trust kids to know that they're straight, but you don't trust them to know they're not straight. When did you decide you were straight? Well, I just
Right.
always been this way. Well, why is that different for someone who doesn't have the same experiences as you?
Right.
Why wouldn't a
But
queer child know they're queer? Like, you've always known what you like. Why wouldn't they always know? And then they don't say anything because they don't feel safe saying anything, or because the world around them is compulsory heterosexuality. So
mm-hmm.
they just play the role until they're in a place where they feel safe enough to be who they are. It's not a
Mm-hmm.
decision or a choice they made later in life. It was, now I feel safe enough to be who I am. And when I have these conversations with caregivers and teachers and parents, the light bulb goes off. I've had teachers and parents crying because they didn't realize that they weren't as open of a door as they thought they were for their children, that they
Mm-hmm.
were assuming that their children were straight. And maybe they were, but the assumption is not healthy, right?
Right.
So helping people navigate their own biases is a
Mm-hmm.
big part of that sort of support for helping professionals, because we don't think about our biases because it's just built into who we are.
Mm-hmm.
And when you have to call that into question and go, why is it a problem for me if Timmy has two moms? Why do I care if, little Tabitha has two dads? Or
Mm-hmm.
or three moms and a dad. Like, what if they're a polyamorous relationship? Like, families look different, and it's important to understand that as long as that child is receiving love and care,
Mm-hmm.
that's what should be focused on, right? And so there's a lot of unlearning that has to happen, specifically in helping professionals, for people to be
Mm-hmm.
able to be the best helpers that they can be.
Right.
And that's where I come in. That is where I provide the CEs so they can, get reimbursed on the back end, and they still come out feeling like more competent, capable, helping professionals.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I do it. That's why I don't teach other sexuality professionals.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of like saying to the beach. I'll do a good conference talk or something like that. But
Mm-hmm.
where I make my money is I feel like I can shift the culture forward by focusing on educators, social workers, and healthcare providers, and making them understand that they are the front line for a lot of time, the social support that we get in this country. And therefore, they need to be empowered to be the most inclusive that they can be.
Oh, thank you for doing that, because it's definitely needed. So thank you for doing that. And I'm glad that people are receptive to
They
it.
are, and what ends up happening is I go to social work conferences and educator
Mm-hmm.
conferences and healthcare provider conferences. When they do that RFP for workshops, I present a
Mm-hmm.
workshop on why what I do is important for what they do, and then I
Mm-hmm.
pass out my little brochure that's got the QR code so they can see all the classes that I offer, and they take them.
Mm-hmm.
And then what I'm looking at is reverse engineering. Like if I have 10 social workers that take
Mm-hmm.
this class. Now I can go to CPS or the hospital or wherever social workers are employed and go, listen, I have had this many social workers take this specific workshop. I think it would be helpful for your, you know, for your employees. And then I can get the money at the corporate level, those corporate
Right.
clients, right? And so because like I said, my bachelor's is in business, I'm always using my degree on how I can better market or be more accessible, because I feel like if it's not accessible, it's not revolutionary. And I consider myself a revolutionary. Um, I hope and pray that when I'm gone, I say when I'm diamonds, because I want to be cremated and turned into diamonds because I'm extra. Um,
Nice.
so I say when I'm diamonds, I hope that people are learning about me and my work and what I do.
Mm-hmm.
I hope that people are picking up the mantle and continuing to do that kind of work. Like that would make my soul so happy, because that's why we do this. We don't
Mm-hmm.
do this to be, famous. Wealth would be great, but we don't do this to be famous. We do this
Mm-hmm.
to shift the culture forward. We
Right.
do this to plant seeds for trees that we're never going to sit under.
Mm-hmm.
And and that's what's most important to me. And so hopefully that's what people get from my work. It's fun. I tell jokes. I make people comfortable, but you don't get this work. You're going to
Mm-hmm.
walk away knowing some things and unlearning some things that expands you as a person and as a professional.
Well, thank you for being here. And I have to give you a shout out because you found out that you have COVID, and
Yes.
you still you still showed up.
Yeah,
So
like
thank you. I
I,
appreciate it.
I literally found out like 2 hours ago.
We're gonna end for the night, but I want to talk about the next podcast we're having in 2 weeks. We're having it with the National Coalition for Sexual Freedom, the founder, Susan Wright. So join us for that. And hit the little subscribe button on us so we can grow our list.
Yes.
And thank Goody for being here. Let me put her website up. And you can contact her and buy some t-shirts or
Yes.
whatever you want to do. And thank you for being here tonight with us. And I hope everybody learned something. We're going to end the show with the video again. Thank you.
Of course.